Hi, welcome to the School Project Podcast, where I teach you about issues emerging that could harm you and your children. I will be your host. Today, we are discussing whether non-educational modern-day TV shows, like Cocomelon, cause ADHD in our children. We are discussing this because I recently saw a TikTok, I know, showing me some interesting facts about the subject. But we all know that TikTok is not the most reliable source when giving out factual information, so I had to delve into the topic myself. And let me tell you, you are in for a ride. I think many of us have been at a breaking point while raising our kids. The dishes need to be done, the kids are crying for a snack, and there's a stack of laundry that's been there for a week, waiting to be folded in the living room. Sometimes it is easier to turn on a show for your kids to have a moment of peace. In fact, a study to discover a link between ADHD and screen time done by the Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry at University of Zurich, Switzerland, noted that TV usage increased dramatically during the COVID lockdown. Here's some statistics for you. Before the COVID lockdown, 30% of kids watched no TV. During lockdown, 27%. 51% of kids watched less than 1 hour a day before the lockdown, and during lockdown, that decreased to 37%. Why did it decrease? Well, before the lockdown, only 19% of kids aged 10 through 18 watched 1 to 3 hours of TV a day. During the lockdown, 32%, as well as 4% of kids watching 4 to 6 hours, when before COVID, no kids were watching that excessively. This shows us that TV usage increased exponentially during COVID, and that was just the TV usage. More parents were working remote, but schools were closed, leaving the parents with little options regarding childcare. Many parents turned to the TV and other electronics to keep their kids busy while they worked. The study I mentioned before also shows how much screen time increased on smartphones, tablets, PCs, and gaming consoles during the lockdown period. So although this podcast will be specifically focused on TV shows, we cannot forget that there are many other factors that could be causing ADHD. It's when the TV shows are shown excessively, but then also paired with all of these other excessive screen time factors that can damage our kids. The same study I mentioned earlier then goes on to say, quote, elevated media time under lockdown was found in patient subgroups with high irritability, concentration problems, and a deterioration of ADHD symptoms, end quote. If that sounded a little wordy, don't worry. Let me explain. Those who participated in the study who had the highest screen time were the most irritable, had more trouble concentrating, and the ADHD symptoms became worse. This directly links to the more time our kids spend on screens, the worse their problems can become, as well as the potential to develop new issues. This is scary for any parent with kids at any age, but the younger your kids are, it is more likely for attention deficit problems to develop. The educational magazine ADDitude or ADDitude tells us, quote, the more television a child watches between the ages of 1 and 3, the greater his or her likelihood of developing attention problems by age 7, end quote. This is a direct link between how this increased screen time is harming our kids and causing ADHD symptoms. While we have non-educational modern-day TV shows parent our kids for a few hours, we are actually jeopardizing them. We should also stop here and define non-educational TV shows. The same magazine, ADDitude, shows us a clear difference between educational TV shows and non-educational TV shows. Shows with rapid zooms, abrupt cuts, and jarring programming do more to harm your child than shows with storytelling, such as Blue's Clues or Mr. Rogers. Educational TV shows avoid the zooms, cuts, and bright colors. They instead focus on slow-paced storytelling. Non-educational shows, such as Cocomelon, change scenes an average of every 2 to 8 seconds. In those short seconds, the camera is constantly moving or panning, and the screen is very brightly colored, which is attractive to kids. Jerica Sands, a child development specialist interviewed by Evie Magazine, has this to say, quote, "Cocomelon is so hyperstimulating that it acts as a drug, a stimulant. The brain receives a hit of dopamine from screen time, and it seems the stronger the drug, the stronger the hit." End quote. With scenes changing so often and bright colors, this stimulates a dopamine hit for kids. This makes kids want to watch the show over and over again, craving for a hit. But these TV shows teach our children to have lower attention spans because they don't need to focus on anything for longer than 8 seconds. But in those 8 seconds, the camera is constantly moving. So in reality, they don't even need to focus on one thing for that short amount of time because the camera simply won't stay still for that long. These TV shows are jeopardizing your kid's attention span, which leads to ADHD and other attention disorders. Now, diving into all these studies is helpful, but advice from other parents is not to be overlooked. By looking into parent-related Reddit threads, we can pull out some interesting things. Although not an official study or the most reliable source, advice from other parents may be some of the most valuable received during parenthood. Many parents shared their thoughts on Cocomelon in many different Reddit threads in r/parenting. User Willia99 says, "It makes my daughter a zombie. LOL." A deleted user said, "The most epic meltdown we had was shutting off the show to get her ready for her bath." User Quiet Coyote 99 said this about her 16-month-old quitting Cocomelon. "We noticed she stopped playing and would just stare at the black TV screen waiting for Cocomelon to come on." And user Spirited-Diamond-716 replied, "I had to do this with my little guy too, and I swear he had withdrawals like someone on crack." All of these parents suffered tantrums and more when Cocomelon wasn't even on the screen. The impact it can have on your child's future attention spans, as well as their behavior while watching Cocomelon, is more than enough reason to stop your kids from watching this show. I know parents want the best for their kids. Even though the TV is a great substitute for parenting sometimes, I think we can all see the issues presenting themselves now. ADHD is something that kids grow up with and will live with for the rest of their life. Although it is more manageable than some disabilities, ADHD is hard for young kids who don't understand why they have to act out this way, and some kids will be on medication for the rest of their life. No parent wants that for their kid, especially when we are living in a time where Adderall, one of the most common medications for ADHD, is having a shortage in the United States. That information comes straight from the FDA itself. We should care about the future of our children. Exposing them to excessive screen time paired with the excessive use of non-educational TV shows, such as Cocomelon, harm your kid. The future problems that arise when you decide to stop showing the show, or the attention problems it may cause, is simply not worth it. Educational TV shows such as Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, The Joy of Painting, and more are just some examples of better TV shows for your child. That being said, TV is never a substitute for parenting. Although these educational shows can help your child more than non-educational ones, the threat of overexposure to electronics is still very harmful. Keeping screen time to a minimum can help minimize the chance of developing attention problems later in life. I hope you all learned a little from this podcast and can make changes that positively impact your child. As always, you can go to the description of your podcast listening site or the description of this video if you are watching on YouTube. Here, you will find the complete list of references stated in the podcast and video if you want to find out more about one of the sources or if you want to start doing more research about the topic on your own. I've only just begun to crack the surface on the studies done on this topic, so if you are interested, there is so much out there for you. Thank you for tuning in to the School Project Podcast. I really hope you learned something meaningful today. I'll see you in the next one.